Being Batman isn't just about having a tragic backstory. If it were that simple, Bruce Wayne would have retired to a beach in Italy a long time ago. It's actually about following a very specific, very strange set of rules that keep Gotham, well, Gotham. But here's the thing. These aren't the laws written in the Gotham City Police Department books. Those are for the citizens. And they aren't even really Batman's personal code. These are the unwritten laws of the Batman comic book universe itself. They are the editorial mandates and the narrative loops that keep the story moving forward, even when they don't exactly make sense. They're the reason the Joker has a revolving door at his jail cell, and why a city protected by a genius ninja detective still has a higher daily casualty rate than an 80s action movie. These are the rules the writers follow so we can have a story to read next month. Because if Batman ever truly won, or if the villains stayed in jail for more than a weekend, the legend would just end. And nobody wants that. So today we're peeling back the cowl to look at the weird meta logic that keeps the Dark Knight on perpetual hamster wheel. These are the 10 unwritten laws of the Batman universe. The first unwritten law of the Batman universe is simple. Your patrol is only as effective as the ledge you're standing on. In Gotham, architectural safety always takes a backseat to the silhouette. This law dictates that Batman must never, under any circumstances, stand on a flat, functional surface if a Gothic stone gargoyle is available within a 3-block radius. If you look at the legendary works of artists like Marshall Rogers or Neil Adams, they weren't just drawing a guy on a roof. They're drawing a predator perched on a piece of history. But there's a weird kind of meta rule at play here. Have you ever noticed that Gotham seems to have more gargoyles per square inch than the rest of the world combined? This isn't an accident. The unwritten law of the medium is that Gotham architecture exists solely to facilitate dramatic posing. There's a psychological component to this too. If a criminal looks up and sees a man standing on a standard gravel roof, he sees a guy in a costume who probably has a mortgage. But if he looks up and he sees a jagged, dark shape blended into a stone demon, he sees a myth. A perfect example of this is in Batman Nightfall. Even when Bruce is physically exhausted and his back is literally failing him, he still finds the strength to haul himself up onto the jagged outcrops. It's as if the gargoyles aren't just decorative, they're his natural habitat. Even in modern runs, like Scott Snyder and Greg Capullo's New 52, we find out that the Court of Owls practically built the city to be haunted. The rule is clear. If Batman isn't risking a 40-story fall just to look cool, he's having an off day. To the Gotham City Police Department, those statues are probably a public safety hazard. But to Bruce, a flat roof is just a missed branding opportunity. He doesn't just use the architecture, he inhabits it, proving that you can't be the world's greatest detective if you don't have a bird's eye view from a 19th century limestone demon. In the DC universe, there's a very clear, very strict hierarchy of power. At the bottom, you have common street thugs. In the middle, you have the heavy hitters of the Justice League. At the top sits a polite, elderly British man with a silver tray and razor-sharp wit. This law dictates that Batman can intimidate the Joker, stare down the literal god of evil, Darkseid, and even pull his signature disappearing act on Commissioner Gordon. But the second Alfred Pennyworth enters the room with a bowl of soup and a lecture on the virtues of 8 hours of sleep, Batman loses all tactical authority. It's the only time the Dark Knight looks like a grounded teenager. There's a narrative necessity to this rule. Alfred is the only person allowed to remind the audience, and Bruce, that Batman is still human. If you look at the legendary banter in The Dark Knight, or the way Alfred practically roasts Bruce in the Tom King run, you realize that Alfred isn't just a butler, he's a one-man reality check. He's the only character in Gotham who can deliver a line like, "I suppose you'll be wanting the Bat Therapeutic heating pad tonight, Master Bruce." You can be the world's greatest detective, but you still can't find your utility belt if Alfred decides to hide it until you eat your vegetables. The unwritten rule here is that Batman's mission only exists as long as Alfred allows it to. He's the anchor to the real world, proving that no matter how many gadgets you have or how many ninjas you can fight at once, you're never too old to be told off by the man who raised you. Law number 3 is the universal answer. Most people have to provide actual coherent explanations for things like, how did you get into my house? Or why are you dressed like a giant rodent in the middle of a Tuesday? Not Bruce. He has the ultimate conversational get-out-of-jail-free card. Whether it's the gravelly whisper of Michael Keaton in 1989 or the self-aware growl of Lego Batman, those two words are more than just a name. They're a narrative force. It doesn't matter if the question is about physics, forensics, or why he's currently hanging from the ceiling of a high-security vault that supposedly has no air vents. If he says these two words, the conversation is legally over. There's a hilarious meta-logic here. "I'm Batman" is the only sentence in the English language that doubles as a superpower. In the writer's room, it's essentially the "because I said so" of the DC universe. It's the ultimate loophole that allows him to bypass the need for realistic explanation. How did he survive a fall from orbit? He's Batman. How did he hack the sentient alien supercomputer with a USB drive? He's Batman. If any other hero tried this, it wouldn't work. If Green Arrow tried to answer a complex forensic question with, "I'm the Green Arrow," people just ask him to leave the crime scene. But when Bruce says it, the universe nods and just accepts it. The unwritten rule is as long as he can maintain that specific level of confidence, he never actually has to show his work. It's not just an identity, it's a total exemption from the laws of common sense. This law covers the most awkward tradition in Gotham City, the tactical ghost maneuver. This rule dictates that when a meeting on the police department rooftop reaches a natural conclusion, or even if it hasn't, Batman must vanish the exact millisecond Jim Gordon turns his head to light a cigarette or check a file. It's a masterclass in theatrical exit timing that has been a staple of the mythos since the early days of the Golden Age. In comics like Batman Year One by Frank Miller, we see the foundations of this relationship. The disappearing act isn't just a party trick, it's Batman's way of maintaining his status quo as an urban myth. If he stayed to say goodbye, or "talk to you next Tuesday, Jim," he'd just be a guy in a high-tech suit. By vanishing, he remains a force of nature. The meta rule here is that for Batman to be effective, he has to be treated like a ghost. And ghosts don't wait for a polite thank you. The logic of this law is tested constantly in the comics, particularly in Jeff Loeb's Long Halloween, where Gordon and Harvey Dent are frequently left talking to thin air. It's a moment that reminds us that in any other social setting, this behavior would be a fast track to losing all your friends. But, despite the social awkwardness, the unwritten rule is that Gordon must never acknowledge the sound of the heavy cape fluttering or a 200-pound man's boot clanging against a metal vent. He just has to sigh, look at the empty space where the billionaire was standing a second ago, and go back to his lukewarm coffee. It's a silent agreement between the two. Gordon provides the lead, and Batman provides the dramatic exit. In the eyes of the writers, if Batman ever stayed long enough to hear the end of Gordon's sentence, it would legally count as a failed patrol. While this law might have some overlap with the "I'm Batman" law, in the world of comic book debates, prep time isn't just a strategy. It's a divine law that transformed Batman from a street-level detective to an unstoppable force of nature. This law dictates that as long as Bruce Wayne has a calendar and a functioning laptop, he can defeat literally anyone, including gods, cosmic entities, and his own teammates in Gotham. A week of planning is worth more than a ring of power or sun-dripped physiology. The ultimate evidence for this is Mark Waid's Tower of Babel storyline. In this arc, we find out that Batman has spent his free time, which apparently he sometimes has a lot of, I don't really see how, creating detailed, terrifyingly effective dossiers on how to neutralize every member of the Justice League, from using red kryptonite to make Superman's skin transparent, to making the Martian Manhunter afraid of the very oxygen he breathes. The law of prep time proves that Batman's most dangerous weapon isn't his belt. It's his sheer, unadulterated paranoia. Another classic example is again in Frank Miller's The Dark Knight Returns, where aging Bruce Wayne manages to take down a godlike Superman simply because he had the foresight to build a specialized armored suit and to also synchronize an entire city's power grid to a sonic emitter. The unwritten rule here is that Batman's superpower is essentially being a student who never stops studying for a test that hasn't even been scheduled yet. To fans and writers alike, Prep time is the ultimate plot armor. It allows a man with no powers to stand shoulder to shoulder with beings who can move planets. But the real paradox is that Batman is never actually surprised. If he's caught off guard, he simply reveals that he's expected to be caught off guard, and planned for the specific lack of planning. It's the comic book version of being 4 parallel universes ahead of your opponent at all times. In the DC universe, it's a law that no villain and very few heroes has ever successfully repealed. Batman famously operates under a strict no-kill policy, a moral code that separates him from the criminals he hunts. But Law Number 6 clarifies that this code says absolutely nothing about your quality of life or your upcoming insurance deductible. In the world of DC Comics, non-lethal is a very flexible term. This law states while Batman won't put a bullet in you, he will happily drop a 3-ton industrial chandelier on your head, shatter your radius and ulna, or leave you hanging by your ankles from a 50-story building in the middle of Gotham. I mean, technically your heart is still beating, so Bruce's conscience remains clear. But your physical therapist is about to become the wealthiest person in the tri-state area. There's hilarious narrative to the tension here. Batman's mercy is strictly biological. As long as there's a pulse, he's the hero. It doesn't matter if you need a liquid diet and a motorized wheelchair for the next 18 months. If you aren't in a casket, the no-kill streak remains unbroken. A perfect example of this moral technicality is again in The Dark Knight Returns, where Batman tells a group of thugs, "I believe you," after they claim to be scared, right before he breaks their limbs in ways that look anything but safe. Or again, we go back and look at Batman Hush, where they pummels the Joker to an absolute brink of life itself, stopping only because Jim Gordon reminds him that not killing is the only thing keeping him from being another costumed lunatic. The unwritten rule here is that Batman is the master of permanent injury. To the criminals of Gotham, a batarang to the kneecap is just Bruce's way of saying, "I value your life, but I definitely don't value your ability to use the stairs." He's not a murderer, but he certainly is the leading cause of chronic joint pain in the DC universe. This law dictates that being a Robin is essentially the world's most dangerous internship. It comes with a mandatory tragedy or transformation clause. The unwritten rule is that any colorful orphan Bruce Wayne brings into the Batcave is destined to follow a very specific life cycle. They start as a bright-eyed distraction in green pixie boots, and then they inevitably end up dead, resurrected, or leading a team of their own. Bruce's parenting style isn't exactly bedtime stories and warm milk. It's more trial by fire and high-speed chases. A classic comic book example is the tragic fate of Jason Todd in A Death of the Family. After being literally voted into the grave by fans via telephone poll, Jason's death became the ultimate proof that Robin's mantle is a high-stake gamble. The unwritten law here is that the red vest isn't a fashion statement, it's a target. However, the law also covers what happens when they actually survive the experiment. Look at Dick Grayson. He eventually realized that wearing a yellow cape while standing next to a man dressed as a giant bat was a recipe for a permanent midlife crisis. So he moved to Bloodhaven and became Nightwing. Even the more modern Robins like Tim Drake or Bruce's biological son Damian Wayne have to navigate the rule that being a Robin means that your childhood ends the second you put on a mask. Whether it's getting beaten with a crowbar or being forced to fight your own father as seen in Batman vs. Robin, the mandate is clear. Bruce doesn't just adopt children, he recruits soldiers. The wardrobe curse ensures that none of them stay sidekicks for long. They either grow up and outgrow the nest, or they become a permanent memorial in a glass case in the Batcave. In Gotham, you don't just graduate from being Robin, you survive it. This law states the security system at Arkham Asylum is legally required to be about as effective as a screen door on a submarine. Despite Batman being a multi-billionaire who can build a Hellbat suit capable of going toe-to-toe with gods, he seemingly refuses to donate a single high-tech deadbolt to the local asylum. The unwritten rules that any villain Batman captures must be back on the streets within 3 to 6 issues. In the comics, this is a narrative necessity. If the Joker actually stayed in a padded cell forever, the book would be over and we'd be reading 22 pages of Bruce Wayne attending board meetings. A prime example of this revolving door logic can be found in the Nightfall series. Bane doesn't even have to hack a mainframe or bribe a guard. He just blows a hole in the wall, and suddenly every psycho Batman has spent years catching is out on the midnight stroll. It's almost as if the walls of Arkham were made of wet cardboard and a prayer. The absurdity of this law is perfectly captured in Grant Morrison's Arkham Asylum, a serious house on serious Earth. But where it's suggested that the asylum isn't even a prison, it's a home. It's a place where the villains go to recharge their batteries before their next big performance. Even when Batman installs state-of-the-art tech, like during Death of the Family arc, the Joker still manages to treat the facility like his own personal clubhouse. The unwritten agreement between Batman and the Gotham legal system is that Arkham's job isn't to hold the villains. It's just to keep them busy long enough for Bruce to catch up on his sleep. In the DC universe, if a villain stays locked up for more than a year of real-world time, it is not seen as a success. It is considered a clerical error. The rule is simple. The door is always unlocked, the guards are always looking the other way, and the next breakout is already scheduled for next month's crossover event. In the world of Batman, the laws of aerodynamics are strictly secondary to the laws of looking cool. This rule states that Batman's cape is not actually made of fabric, it's made of pure concentrated drama. It is legally required to behave like a sentient entity that grows, shrinks, and flows in total defiance of gravity. And even though it's completely unrealistic, I still think it's kinda cool. If you look at the legendary work of artists like Todd McFarlane or Kelly Jones, the cape often spans 40 feet and has more sharp points than a professional kitchen knife set. It doesn't matter if Batman is standing in a sealed underground vault with zero airflow, the cape still must billow as if he's standing in the Category 3 hurricane. There's a psychological reason for this meta glitch. The cape is designed to hide Batman's human proportions. If a thug can see where Batman's shoulders end and his legs begin, he can aim a gun. But when the cape behaves like a shifting cloud of ink, he becomes an untouchable myth. The comic book evidence is everywhere, but it's most prominent in how the cape is used as a psychological weapon. In Batman Year 1, David Mazzucchelli draws the shroud in a way that turns Bruce into a literal shadow, making him look twice his actual size to terrify the Gotham City Police Department. The unwritten rule is that if a cape ever looks like a regular piece of cloth draped over a guy's shoulders, the artist has failed. It needs to wrap around him like bat wings when he's brooding, and transform into a massive jagged kite the second he jumps. The physics here suggests that the heavier the situation gets, the more majestic the cape becomes. Bruce probably spends more on tailoring and swoosh maintenance than he does on the Batmobile. Because in Gotham, if you don't have 10 yards of velvet trailing behind you, you're just a billionaire in a gym suit. The cape is the ultimate tactical smokescreen. It's the difference between vigilante and a monster. Law number 10. The Secret Identity Insurance. The final unwritten law of the Batman universe is that the crazier Bruce Wayne acts, the safer Batman remains. The law dictates the billionaire playboy persona isn't just a cover, it's a weaponized version of incompetence. To protect his secret identity, Bruce is narrative bound to act like a shallow, airheaded socialite who couldn't find his way out of a paper bag without a map and a team of consultants. The logic is simple. Nobody would ever suspect that the man who just accidentally fell into a decorative fountain at a charity gala is the same grim shadow who dismantled the mob syndicate 2 hours earlier. By being the most embarrassing person in the room, he becomes the least suspicious person in the city. He's essentially the world's most overqualified method actor, and his audience is the entire population of Gotham. In Grant Morrison's run, we see Bruce take this to a tactical extreme. He cultivates a reputation as a reckless thrill-seeker, specifically so that any broken ribs, black eyes, or facial bruising he sustains while crime fighting can be blamed on a drunken polo accident or skydiving mishap. This law proves that the cowl isn't the real mask, the tuxedo is. The unwritten rule is that if the public ever starts to think that Bruce Wayne is actually a competent, disciplined, or even slightly focused human being, the secret is in jeopardy. Therefore, he must maintain his status quo as Gotham's most eligible and most useless bachelor at all costs. To the citizens of Gotham, Batman is a terrifying, omnipotent legend of the night, while Bruce Wayne is just the guy who owns their apartment building and occasionally forgets how to wear a watch. It's the ultimate secret identity insurance. You don't hide in the shadows, you hide in the bright, expensive lights of a life no one would ever want to take seriously. So, at the end of the day, these laws prove one thing. Gotham City doesn't run on physics, politics, or even basic common sense. It runs on the rule of drama. We can laugh at the revolving doors of Arkham, the impossible cape physics, or the rule that a billionaire can't stay awake through an opera. But these unwritten rules are the internal scaffolding of a legend. If Batman actually fixed Gotham's infrastructure, if he stayed for a polite chat with Gordon, or if he traded the gargoyles for a sensible desk job, the story would end. And people aren't ready for a world without Batman. The laws exist to keep the Dark Knight in a state of perpetual, beautiful conflict. They ensure that no matter how many times he wins, there is always another shadow to jump into and another rooftop to haunt. Bruce Wayne might be a master of prep time, but even he can't beat the editorial mandates that keep him in the cowl. He's a man trapped in the loop of his own creation, and as long as he keeps looking cool while doing it, I know I'll still be reading. But what do you think? Which of these unwritten laws is the most absurd? Or did I miss one that drives you crazy every time you pick up a comic? Let me know in the comments. Thanks for watching and stay focused, unless you're at a gala, which in case, feel free to fall into the fountain. If you enjoyed this video into the weird logic of Gotham, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel for more content. And if you want to support me so I can keep making content like this, you can always buy me a comic over on Ko-fi. My link is in the description. Every little bit helps and it really keeps the series going. Before you go, I also want to hear from you. Which of these unwritten laws do you think is the most ridiculous? And more importantly, who should we cover next? Whether it's the unwritten rules of being Spider-Man, the logic of the X-Men, or the weird mandates of the Superman universe, let me know what other rules videos you might want to see. Drop any other thoughts down in the comments. I love seeing what everyone notices about the way these stories are built. Thanks so much for watching, and as always, I'll catch you in the next one.